So let's just kind of start out with what was the process of, now I understand these are just guidelines that were put in place.
Sure.
The whole idea of NIL being accessible to high school students, where did that come from and kind of where did that originate? Because that's something outside of what you guys do,
You bet.
correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think the first thing I would say is I would agree with you early on that when folks hear NIL, their brain goes to Alabama football and and Power Five conferences, et cetera. And at the high school level, especially in our area, that's really not the level we're talking about. The second thing is that NIL has never been prohibited at the high school level in Iowa. It's never been mentioned because the concept was never considered. And now here we are, the genie's out of the bottle, the light's green, and folks are asking us, so can they do it? Can they not? And based on what the information that we get from the National Federation, which is our umbrella organization nationally, some legal advice through our legal meetings that we go to at those conferences, and visiting with other states, we just felt like it was important for us to be a resource for our young people, their families, and their schools. We didn't feel like we wanted them to just go out there and dabble in this. We thought let's give them a starting point, and then if they have questions, they can certainly reach out to us. But we feel like a big responsibility we have is to provide guidance in everything. And since this is a topic now and it's at the forefront of everybody's consciousness, and again, as I mentioned, the national landscape is that it has filtered into high schools, anywhere from very small situations to Jaden Rashada in California, who has a $9 million deal. So and everything in between. So we just felt like let's develop some guidance. We presented it to our board. Our board liked it because it's not heavy-handed. It doesn't get into the weeds. And it basically says this will serve your best interests if you do it this way.
Yeah, what was the process in coming up with those guidelines and kind of how did you guys go about that?
Yeah, we talked internally as a staff. Again, I reviewed and we reviewed several policies, and ours is not a policy; it's guidelines. But we looked at policies from other states, and we sought our own legal counsel. We have our legal counsel. And through those discussions, we came up with a draft of something we thought was workable and useful. And we then presented that to our Board of Control for discussion back in June. And then at our August meeting, we presented it again as an item to be approved.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions I had, because they are guidelines, that leaves me to wonder, say someone does not comply with one of the guidelines. Is there any form of enforcement, or is that even possible because they are just guidelines and this is so new?
I think some of it falls into two categories of policy. They relate to two policies we have. One is the awards rule. And so there are certain guidelines students have to follow. Things like you can't collect money for every field goal you kick. You can't go play in a 3-on-3 basketball tournament and accept money. Those are things that you cannot use your skill to gain compensation for that. The other is undue influence. So if somebody is enticing you with a deal or money, et cetera, and they're not doing that for every student in this particular school, that's considered undue influence, which most people would equate to recruiting. And then that would violate our undue influence policy. So for that, those penalties are spelled out in our handbook, and we would follow those. And quite frankly, Raina, we depend on our schools to keep track of that, and we trust the integrity of our administrators and believe that they do what's right, and they'll report whatever they may see that's kind of out of line from that. The other is, some of those guidelines are specifically not going to have our consequences on it, but they're to separate the name, image, and likeness of the student from that of their school. So when we say don't use your uniform, don't use the logo, et cetera, what we don't want is for a student to engage in some opportunity and then have their school or some other organization tap them on the shoulder and say, we think we're entitled to some of that because, you were wearing our uniform, or, you identified yourself as a member of this. Not that our schools would, not that anybody would do that, but we just feel like it's important to separate that this is your name, image, and likeness, not your school's name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, and with this kind of being, I guess you can call it the guinea pig year, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys plan on, kind of reevaluating, say, after about a year or so, to figure out, okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't, here's what we want to implement?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think we do that with everything we develop, and it may not be a year, right? I mean, it could be a week. You never know. We may run into things that we just did not anticipate. This is one of those things. What do they say? You're building the plane as you fly it. So we're trying. Again, we just felt like we had to start somewhere. We felt like our students and their families, this will be very new for them, and we just thought it very important for us to be a part of the process for them.
Yeah, and has there been like a separate process in terms of informing schools, coaches, and administrators about this, or did you kind of just send them the same guidelines that kind of the public were all subjected to?
Yeah, they have these guidelines now because we update our handbook and we update our policies and our guidance each year at this time, and so we posted our new our updated handbook yesterday, and we posted our NIL guidance yesterday.
Yeah, and I know it's only been up for a short amount of time, but have you gotten any questions or concerns from coaches, parents, players, community members?
I've received maybe 3 emails just asking for a little clarification. And one of the things that we'll do is I'll run a Zoom with our ADs next week I want to give them a chance to, digest it, think about it, maybe come up with some questions they may have, and then have a Zoom where I give them an opportunity to fire some things off, and we'll try to do the best we can to answer their questions.
Yeah, and I kind of want to get into, giving you an opportunity to clear up any misconceptions, because I think one of the main things that I've already heard in the short amount of time is that people are under the impression that you guys are now, as an association, are allowing these athletes to profit off their name, image, and likeness, whereas you said before, well, this was never prohibited. It was always technically allowed, but the topic had just never been mentioned. So you guys aren't technically saying, yeah, it's okay. You're saying this is out there, it exists, so we want to provide guidelines so that our student athletes are informed and protected should they pursue any NIL opportunities. Is that kind of correct?
That's correct. Yep. It's been out there. It is out there. There's nothing prohibiting it. So let's do it in a way that we can give them, help them with some skills to navigate through the waters.
Yeah, I guess my final thing is there anything you would like to clarify, or anything you want to make sure people absolutely know that maybe they didn't get from the guidelines, or that they should know going forward?
Yeah, I think I would say, we're neither endorsing this or discouraging it. It is what it is. It's part of the landscape now, and we will do what we need to do to help the folks that are involved with it, whether those be families or schools. And it's new enough, and it's a hot enough topic. And as you mentioned earlier, what people's minds go different places when they hear things like this, and we are. It's just our job to try to temper all that and help people understand that this is high school. Those same values of high school activities and high school sports are maintained, and now we're going to have to weave this into the fabric of all that. And that may be a challenge, but it's a challenge that we'll have to be up for.